I'm very, very privileged to invite Cathy Evans, our chair, up to speak to you some more. Thank you. Take care.
Good morning. I'm Cathy Evans, and I'm delighted to welcome so many of you to Retina UK's annual conference. And whether you're online or whether you're here with us in London, thank you for joining us today. And I know many of you will be attending conference for the first time. In fact, some of you may be meeting other people with inherited sight loss for the first time. Others will have been involved with the charity for 50 years. And you're all welcome. Seeing you all here today with the great buzz in the room is really uplifting, so it's really great. Thank you. If you're joining us online, I hope you can feel the energy too. I became chair of the Trustees in 2024, and before that, I was the Chief Executive at the Royal College of Ophthalmologists, and I retired 2 years ago. Retina UK is the only UK charity dedicated solely to working for people affected by inherited sight loss, and it's marking significant milestones in its history, 50 years. Many of you will already know that our friend, founder, and honorary president and inspiration, Linda Cantor, MBE, sadly passed away recently. I know many of you will have had the pleasure of meeting Linda over the years and will mourn her passing. Linda founded the charity 50 years ago and was the driving force behind the charity's development from a small community group to the respected national organisation it is today. Linda has made a huge impact for thousands of people living with inherited sight loss through the charity's history. When Linda formed the British Retinitis Pigmentosa Society, little could she have imagined the organisation it would become today. And in this session, Professor John Marshall, also MBE, who was part of the founding team with Linda, will reflect on those small beginnings and the impact the charity's had over the years. Yes, certainly. But I want to tell you about what Retina does today. We provide a range of emotional and practical support, services all free of charge to anyone affected by inherited sight loss and the professional community who support you. And these include a helpline, which was first introduced in 1987. In 2004, we received 633 calls and answered 282 emails. And calls can vary in topic and length, and could be a few minutes, or could be well over an hour. But we are here. We're here for you. And then there's our growing network of peer support groups. Many are held locally around the country, where our community can get together, share ideas, and support one another. We also have a range of online-only groups and specialist groups for young adults, women, men, and those with specific interests. Last year, 1,206 people registered to attend our peer support group meetings, and we've over 1,000 already this year. There were 85 group meetings last year, and this year we've already had 66, so we're well on course to surpass that number. You tell us that peer-to-peer support is invaluable, and the impact of speaking to others with inherited sight loss is life-changing. So I do want to take a moment to thank our committee volunteers, and without them, we simply couldn't do our vital work. And there's about 40 volunteers here with us today, and they have been the lifeblood of this organisation. A wide range of backgrounds and ages, they all have one thing in common: a commitment to using their lived experience to make a difference to others, and we're really grateful. So I hope we can have just a brief moment of thanks. Sorry. Thank you, volunteers. But we also have our information services, which includes our website, newsletters, webinars, podcasts on a wide range of topics. So you should have the knowledge you need to make informed choices. But how do we know where we should focus our work? Well, many of you will have completed our 3-year tracking survey, and it shows us clearly where improvements are most needed in health and social care, in research, daily life, emotional well-being, and access to support and technology. Most importantly, it guides how we shape our services and priorities to ensure we're meeting current needs. The survey is just one of the many ways we ensure lived experience is at the heart of everything we do. And yesterday, as Tina mentioned, we held our professional conference, and that was attended by about 400 professionals from a wide range of roles. It was a great day. There was great energy, and we know that with collaboration, we can achieve better outcomes. As for the future, well, the staff team and trustees take our responsibilities to safeguard the future of the charity very seriously. While so much has been achieved over the last 50 years, there's much more to be done, and we will continue to work hard, innovate, advocate, and be ambitious. So, I would like now to invite Professor John to come and speak, to give a flavour of the work that has been done, the milestones reached, and Linda's amazing personality. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's John Marshall, and I've got to do 50 years in 15 minutes. When our founder Linda was diagnosed in 1971, little was known about RP other than it was inherited and in a number of different ways. The response from doctors tended to be, "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do, go home." Remember, this was a time before social media, and after being given such a negative response from their doctor, it wasn't surprising that RP sufferers searched newspapers for any sort of hope anywhere in the world in order to try to find a treatment. Unfortunately, this led to an industry of fake treatment and false claims. So, when our charity was formed in 1975, I became a founder trustee and chairman of the Scientific and Medical Advisory Board, and we decided to review all the so-called treatments using rigorous scientific methods in order to stop the emotional stress and financial loss of RP sufferers. In the 1970s, there were multiple claims for treatment for RP, such as bee stings. You could go to Bromley and have your face stung by special bees that knew how to cure RP. A secret treatment was known in St. Gallons in Switzerland. Extracts of apricots, Laetrile, was found to be very good for treating RP in Cuba. Yeast RNA, called NCAD, was available in Moscow, and ultrasound in Odessa. You could have hyperbaric oxygen in Italy, and evangelical counseling in America. Our members wanted the truth. Hence, together with Professor Alan Bird and Alan Dates from the US, we went to Russia and a number of other locations to analyze the claims. Now, it was difficult because in communist countries at the time, they had nothing to sell And the only way they could generate hard currency was to claim treatments for incurable diseases. So that was, the Russian government was actually behind this. All these forced treatments had a number of things in common. First of all, people with them never published. So the rest of the scientific community didn't know what was going on. Secondly, they had to have multiple bits. So if you looked at the exercises, they could say, oh, but you didn't look at the vitamins. And if you looked at the vitamins, oh, but the exercises are important. They had to be expensive, so you saw value for money, but not too expensive or you wouldn't go. They had to be repetitive, so you had to keep coming back so they could blame it on you. Oh, well, if only you come back for the 75th time, it was your fault. You had to give up things. You had to give up smoking if you smoke. You had to give up drinking if you drink. You had to give up loving your wife if you love your wife. Because again, they wanted to be able to blame it on you, the patient. Well, the most important thing of all these treatments is they had to be in another country because you'd lost faith in your own doctors. Okay, so we did our job, and we did it very thoroughly. I have to say, having upset our membership and the British press by our negative findings, we needed to get our act together. In those early days, we didn't even know how many people had RP in UK, or how many cases involved families, or how many cases were isolated. We had no idea how individuals progressed with their disease. We were very lucky in that Professor Barry J and his wife Marcel took an interest in familial patterns in days before our understanding of molecular biology. So together with Alan Bird, they began to build up a registry of RP patients. It was said that Marcel J could find members of your family you didn't know. Unfortunately, she could find members of your family you didn't want to know. But it was very useful. It quickly became apparent that RP was what we call a dustbin diagnosis. If you had certain changes inside your eye and certain changes in your behavior, then of course you had RP. But this is a little bit of a problem really, because if you think about it, a man could have a limp, and he could limp because his shoes were too tight, or he got a stone in his shoe, or he got a broken ankle. And it's no good giving new shoes to someone with a broken ankle. So it was exactly the same with RP. We had to find out how many different diseases were in this group and how each of them were progressing and how each of them could be treated. Hence the new name for RP, inherited retinal dystrophies. We were very lucky. We got a huge grant from the American Foundation, similar to our own, which funded an extensive program of work of electrophysiology, psychophysics, biochemistry, photochemistry, to try to break down behavior in terms of what was going on, so-called, in medical terms, defining the phenotype. It was a terrible period for me. My students would always catch me on the phone and roll up my sleeve and stick a needle in. Oh, we need some controlled blood. I'm lucky to have survived that. In 1976, the BRPS initiated a great deal of laboratory research. We created a BRPS tissue culture laboratory in the University of Westminster. We had a BRPS eye donor scheme, so we could begin to really understand what was happening in the cells before they died. And it rapidly became apparent that loss of light cells in the retina could be caused by defect in the light cells, or in the cells that looked after them, or in the bloodstream, or a whole range of things. So it's quite clear, it's no good doing a treatment for the light-sensitive cells if you've got a problem with metabolic transport in your blood. So that was a real lesson for us all to learn. And part of that was biochemistry. So the BRPS created a number of PhD studentships in cell biochemistry. We then moved to an era of breakthroughs, which was triggered by advances in molecular biology, enabled us to find the genes responsible for RP. The age of the gene hunters had begun and is here now. We were very lucky that one of our sponsored research workers, Professor Shomi Bhattacharya, found the first RP gene. It was one which caused X-linked disease, where mothers passed on the problem to their sons. Shomi's work was rapidly followed by that of Professor Pete Humphreys in Ireland, who was able to show defective genes in chromosome 3 were related to dominant disease, the one which occurs regardless of sex from generation to generation. We now have more than 500 genes. So you can see how big the problem is, because we've got to attack each of those. Anyway, the work was aided by parallel studies in animals, and in particular Labradors and Retrievers. Now, these are commonly used as guide dogs, and unfortunately, these dogs get a form of RP, progressive retinal atrophy. So, a great friend of mine, Professor Gus Aguirre, was the first to demonstrate the potential of gene therapy in big animals by putting lots of good genes into Labradors with bad genes. On a very memorable occasion, a dog called Lancelot, yes, he was married to. Anyway, Lancelot was very, very significantly visually handicapped. But after the treatment, he could chase and catch frisbees. I mean, just an amazing breakthrough, huge amount of publicity, thank goodness. The importance of knowing which gene is present in each individual shocked our government to start creating genotyping centres. And we're very lucky with the work of Professor Graham Black as a leader in this role for a genotyping centre for RP. Once we have the gene, how do we go about treating? Well, 3 ways. 1, we can add normal genes to eyes with recessive disease and hope that that's going to be an improvement. 2, with modern methods, an enzyme extracted from a sea urchin, we can edit genes. We can take the chromosome and cut out the defective gene. And that's going to be helpful in dominant diseases. And then we now have a new technique called gene silencing, whereby we can switch off the messenger RNA from the defective gene that goes to the manufacturing centers in the cell. We can silence it. Now that needs repeated treatment, and again we're very lucky because the current chairman of our medical advisory board, Professor Tara Moore, is ready to commence a gene silencing program on inherited diseases in the front of the eye. All of these procedures are under investigation, but so far gene augmentation, adding bits of good gene, is so far advanced. And thanks to the work of Professor Robin Alley at University College London and Moorfields Eye Institute, he's now at King's College, we have seen the introduction of treatment for RP65 using this type of gene therapy. And it's very effective in young children, and you'll hear more about this in the next talk. It also went through the FDA, which is a big challenge, the American approval. We've also seen gene therapy applied in the case of choroideremia with Professor Robert McLaren in Oxford. At present, gene therapies are making good progress, but they are there mainly to stop development or slow down the process. Now, many of our members are in midlife and have already lost a lot of retina. So now, can we do anything for them? Well, yes, the society is really targeting repair, replacement, and regeneration. And that's very important. And already we've seen stem cell work putting pigmented cells in the retina. Indeed, one of my students, Caroline, first demonstrated this back in 1989. And Pete Coffey, who unfortunately died in June, had recently undertaken early clinical trials together with Lyndon Cruz at Moorfields. So this work is moving to try to help people that have already had significant loss. And I think this is really exciting. A further area of interest is the understanding of the genes controlling development in the womb, homobox genes. And this is absolutely fascinating because if we could reactivate genes that start the thing in the womb, that would be amazing. And it's quite strange, but many animals maintain those genes throughout life. So, for example, if you pull the tail off a lizard, I don't suggest you do, it'll grow a new tail. It's got the genes. And we've got those genes, but we need to switch them on. And just recently, a magnificent series of papers was published on snails. And the snail has these similar genes and can regenerate its entire eye. So please don't feel you're being forgotten. You're not, and you'll hear more about that in just a moment. So finally, we all know about bionic eyes and robotics, etc., etc. I leave you with one message where we did come slightly unstuck. When the Army first introduced night vision goggles, they gave us some, and we tested them. And our membership said, oh, don't think a lot of that. I'd rather have a big torch. And it's ugly and clunky. And one guy thought they were fantastic. Please, can I have them again? Please, can I have them again? And, yeah, fine. You know, it's all part of the trial. And then we got a call to say, unfortunately, he'd been arrested by the police for using them as a peeping Tom. So RPs, be careful with the new technologies. I've given you a quick survey of 50 years. And today, we are in a position where we can really roar ahead with a number of different areas. And you're going to hear about that in the next speak from Michael. I hope that Linda's hopes to find treatments and cures are going to happen, and it's going to be down to you guys hitting your MP, hitting the press, hitting us. Now, I believe that Kathy has an announcement to make. Kathy.
Thank you for that really fantastic talk, John. And I know there's so much more you could have said. But what better way to celebrate 50 years than with a cake? So we are going to ask Stephen Goulden and Elizabeth Bayer to come and do a ceremonial cutting of the cake. They are both very long-term volunteers who've served the charity with great dedication for a long time. We're not asking them to parcel it up into lots of squares, but they are going to come and make a first attempt.
And then above the cake, there are, how many? There's about 15 little cake pops. And on each one of the sticks is a blue circle with a white circle on it. And they say different names. So we have volunteers, collaboration, community, information, impact support, caring, connection, ambitious, research, charity, fundraising, dependable, trustworthy, approachable, and well-being. Okay.